Shalom Aleichem. This is a tribute to Rav Agoin Rabbi Yisrael Friedman, the Rosh Yeshiva of Ohelei Torah, Ohelei Menachem, for many years, close to 50 years. I personally knew Rabbi Yisrael. I had many conversations with him about Chassidish history, Chabad history, and more than just history, attitudes, feelings, understandings. And I learned much from him. And L'schus Nishmasei, his first Yortzeit, Shabbos, this Shabbos, Zayin, Nissan, I share the following. Rabbi Yisrael was named after the holy Ruzhiner Rebbe, the Heilige Ruzhiner, Rabbi Yisrael, whose family name was Friedman, Rabbi Yisrael Friedman. He was a young child in Brunois, in the Yeshiva, and he remembered things for Reb Nissan. He told me he remembered the way Reb Nissan davened. And he even told me once where Reb Nissan was davening and a ball flew into the room and maybe broke a window or something, and Reb Nissan just continued davening. Because of his go'inus and his memory, Rabbi Yisrael Friedman, he remembered things probably from 6, 7, 8 years old as a young boy. Rabbi Yisrael was a sharfer. He was sharp-witted, and he approached learning that way and life that way. He didn't have time for nonsense. That's the type of person he was. Everything had a meaning, everything had a purpose. He was someone who was constantly learning and working on himself. I was told by a neighbor on Montgomery Street where he lived that he could see through the window that Friday night he was up all night learning. A friend of mine here in Borough Park, the Mechel Kurtzab, told me when he hosted him for a Shabbos or two when he was in our shul in Beis Menachem here, he didn't go to sleep Friday night. So you're talking about a Yid who was up all night learning, and if he was up Friday night, he probably was up Thursday night. He was an Amkin. He wasn't someone who just learned and knew a lot of information, but he was very deep, very teeth. And this also spilled over in his giving, in his shir, for example, that he gave to Balabatim. My father's Zunsan used to attend every shir of his that he gave in the Chevra Shas Shul on Montgomery and Kingston. And Shabbos morning, he would give a Chassidish shir before davening, and sometimes when I was in Crown Heights, I would go. And if we learned more than 5, 6 lines through the hour or so, was a chiddush, was a novelty. Because as gegribbelt in avort, as we say, he dissected each word back and forwards and thinking about it and arguing about it. And you couldn't just read and just go on. And you know, when you learn Likutei Torah, many times you learn Likutei Torah, or the Rebbe's a Maimer, it was the same way. I'll give you another example of his sharfkeit, his shrewdness and his wittiness. He once told me that, he said, the Rebbe Marash, we're talking about the Rebbe Marash, so he said to me, the Rebbe Marash should give an appelle. He says, Chassidim didn't have a handle on the Rebbe Marash. They couldn't figure him out. Now the Rebbe, of course, is the one who brought the Rebbe Marash down to us. But Rabbi Yisrael shared with me the way Chasidim of Old didn't understand the Rebbe Marash. And that's why Taka the Rebbe spent so much time, maybe, do I know why, but I'm saying it makes sense why the Rebbe had to open the Rebbe Marash up. But until I heard from Rabbi Yisrael that Chasidim, felt a Amufle it was like, who is he? We don't get him. How does he fit into the first three Rabbeim and the last three Rabbeim? It's these type of very deep insights that in brief words he would tell me. Another thing he told me once, that when the Rebbe Rashab writes in Kutas Atfila, I believe, that you shouldn't make your own interpretations in davening, he said he heard from Chasidim that this was referring to the Rashbats, Reb Shmuel ben Salah, Chosel Tzemach Tzedek. Now, Rashbats, such a yid? Yeah, the Rebbe Rashab says, be careful not to machen the eigene Pirushim in davening. No, a Rebbe is shayach of die Sachen. Only a Rebbe. So, but nevertheless, there were geschmack. So he told me a taich that he heard b'shem the Rashbats. Lokeil baruch ni'imis yiteinu. We say every day in davening birchas Krishma. Lokeil baruch ni'imis. Gib av yiteinu. Gib avek. Deine geschmackste Sachen lokeil zu Gott. Und mach Gott dein geschmackste Sach. Which means, give away all of your delicacies and pleasures and indulgences, whatever you consider pleasurable, and replace it with the most pleasurable thing, which is godliness. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lokeil baruch ne'imis yiteinu. Yiteinu means give away. It's a geben. Yiteinu ne'imois. Give away your geschmack and substituted by lokeil. And he told me that was a taich from the Rashbats. I told it over here to Rabbi Pilchik's son-in-law, and he every time he sees him, he says, "Zog mir mit the taich, zog mir mit the taich." Rabbi Yisrael Friedman, about his goyness and learning and being a Rosh Yeshiva and being Madrich the Bocharim, you don't need me for that. Everyone knows about that. Rabbi Yisrael was a yid who could verbring for 6, 7, 8 hours deep ideas. He was real Chabad. You're talking about Chochma Bina Das, his bonanus. He was shaykh for meditation, Chabad meditation for hours. He was a maskil. Together with being a maskil in Chassidus, he was a goy noila minigla. I asked him once, did he ever attend one of Rabbi Soloveitchik's shiurim, the Yortzeit shiurim, the famous shiurim, where 2,000 people packed the auditorium at Yeshiva University over there for twice a year. And he told me quietly, he went one time. He just wanted it. Everyone speaks about it, so he decided to go. So I asked him, was hat getracht? What did you think about it? So he said that a Baal Darshan, you couldn't beat him as a Baal Darshan. But he repeated the same things many times in different words. In other words, his power of drush, of sermonizing, was the top, was the best. But really, he said the same thing in different words and in different examples. But he said, as far as the content was concerned, it was superb. Rabbi Yisrael had Yechidus in the 58 or 59, I forget now, when he was still a Bocher. He was sent as a Rosh Yeshiva to Newark, I believe in 58. And he asked the Rebbe, how should he deal with the Bocherim and all that? And the Rebbe said, Ich verlasse auf euch. I rely on you, which is a great compliment. There was an issue in the 60s that he had to let go of someone who was in yeshiva, and I asked why. So I was told because he felt he wasn't 100% chassidische hanochos. Now I'm not saying it is that way, it's not that way, but just he had a certain attitude that he picked up from older chassidim. For example, earlier in the 50s, when he was still in Yisrael, before he came to America, he and several others were sent to a Tamim, Reb Gershon Chaim, who was a Rav in Haifa. They wanted to make a yeshiva, so they were there for a while. It didn't work out at the end. I mean, they were there for a while, but it didn't last. So he saw this chassid, and he was a very great chassid. He learned in Lubavitch. He was from the Chaim family, so he was around Chasidim. Rabbi Avram Mayor, in Crown Heights, he spent hours, days with Rabbi Avram Mayor. So when you spoke to Rabbi Yisrael, you were getting Lubavitch, B'tarosa. What's Lubavitch, B'tarosa? Lubavitch in its purity, meaning the arum, the environment, the culture that came along with Chabad coming to America and developing, and the Rebbe's Chasidim and all that. A niggin. When he sang a niggin, you saw that there was an neshama here. He sang it slowly and with feeling. It wasn't just Chach Tayim Shalosh 1 2 3. A niggin is given a niggin. Just like the way he said a maimer, klor, slow, word for word. And you saw that he knew what he's talking about. At this verstanden, he understood it. So too when he sang a Chassidish niggin. Towards the end of his life, the last 10, 15 years, he was considered like the Rav of the Rebbe's room upstairs for the Rebbe's minyan. That's where he davened. And I had a chance many times to walk him home and to walk part of the way. And it was always an experience. With Rabbi Yisrael, it was always content, teichen. So his first yahrzeit coming, Zion, Nissan, Zichrei Baruch. There's no question that he continues to be mashpia on his talmidim, and the Eibusher help. We should have the Geula Shalema, B'Korev Mamish, V'hu B'Teicham, Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh.